On a stormy winter night in 1505, young Martin Luther was making his way through a dark forest on his way back to university. It was raining heavily, and the wind was howling like a hungry wolf. Suddenly, lightning pierced the sky with a blinding flash, followed by a tremendous boom that made the ground shake beneath his feet. Frightened, Martin cried out, falling to his knees in the mud, and raising his hands to the heavens, "Saint Anna, save me, and I vow to become a monk." It wasn't a fleeting promise. Within a few weeks, Martin abandoned his law studies and knocked on the door of the Augustinian monastery in Erfurt. Within the monastery walls, Luther lived a strict ascetic life, fasting for days at a time, flogging his body to purify his soul, and spending nights prostrating on the cold ground, seeking forgiveness. Yet, something tormented him. He didn't feel close to God. The more he read the Bible, the more his doubts grew. Why was he required to buy indulgences to gain God's favor? Why did the Pope in Rome live in palaces while the poor suffered? And most importantly, could a person earn salvation through works alone? These questions burned like fire in his chest, and he had no idea they would set the entire world on fire. On October 31, 1517, under the fading autumn sun, Martin stood in front of the Wittenberg church with a scroll containing 95 theses, challenging the Catholic Church and indulgences. He raised his gavel and, with a powerful blow, hammered the scroll against the church door. That sound was like a deafening explosion, heard only by God and fate, but soon to reach the entire world. His ideas quickly spread like wildfire, thanks to the invention of printing. People began to ask, what if Martin was right? What if we don't need the Pope to reach God? The Church didn't stand idly by. The Pope ordered his books burned and even summoned him to a historic trial in Worms in 1521. In a magnificent hall, Emperor Charles V sat on his throne, surrounded by leading clergy and noblemen. In the center of the hall stood Martin Luther, surrounded by a pile of his forbidden books. The judge asked him sternly, "Do you deny what you wrote?" Martin looked at the crowd. He knew that a single word from him could save him, but he had chosen his path. He raised his head and said in a firm voice, "I cannot retreat. This is my faith. Here I stand, and I cannot do otherwise. So help me God." A deathly silence fell over the hall. Then came the verdict. Luther was a heretic, and his life was at liberty for anyone who would kill him. But Luther wasn't killed. He disappeared. On his way back from the trial, a group of knights attacked Martin's carriage and kidnapped him. No one knew where he went, but the truth, these knights were actually the men of Frederick the Wise, the prince who protected Luther. He was taken to Wartburg Castle, where he lived in disguise as the Knight Jurg. There, he accomplished his greatest achievement. He translated the Bible into German, so that every person could read it for themselves without the mediation of the Church. Luther's teaching spread, peasant revolts erupted, and Europe became an arena of conflict between Catholics and Protestants. This wasn't what Martin wanted, but he could no longer stop the tide. In his later years, he returned to Wittenberg, where he started his family and married former nun Katharina von Bora, leading a life filled with love but also pain. On a cold February night in 1546, sick in his bed, he muttered, "We are beggars, that's the truth," and then he closed his eyes forever. Luther was neither a king nor a warrior, but he changed the face of the world. People emerged from the darkness of spiritual slavery into the light of freedom, giving birth to the Reformation, which divided Europe but opened new doors to thought. Today, centuries later, the sound of the hammer still echoes on the horizon.